What's the YouTube? Dale here from Zephyr, and today I'm going to bring you my first place Elemental Hero profile. So that's right, I decided to take this to locals right at the last minute, made a couple of changes, and it made it all the way to first place. Now my matchup started off with Fire King Snake Eyes, followed up by Fire King Tri Brigade, then Voiceless Voice, which I drew, and then in the final round was against Madolches, who had been doing incredibly well the entire day, and we actually had a really good duel, a bit of back and forth. All of my games were actually really good, to be fair. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. Now I'm going to take you through the list, show you what we've got, explain why we've got it, and then explain my choices of the particular types of cards I chose for this build. So for the Elemental Heroes, we went with 2 Stratos, the 1 Honest Neos, the 1 Shadow Mist, and the 1 Liquid Soldier. Now, a lot of players are only playing 2 Stratos right now, and this purely because a Hero Lives is now at 3. You don't need to be going so ham on Stratos. A lot of cards, or a lot of players do play 2 Shadow Mist and don't play the Honest Neos. I personally quite like it as one of them ones that people don't expect it. Some of those times where it's still a useful card, it's very rare. It's like one of the last cards you will search when you're doing all of your hero searches, because you've got different ways you want to go for it. First you want to get into your Destiny engine, then you might want to get into your Plasma and everything else from that point on. But what I did like the idea behind it is that being able to add it to my hand meant that if my opponent was in a position where they felt they could get rid of one of my monsters and forgot about this, I would just drop this on this, and that would ultimately allow me to deal damage while protect my monster as well. Or if I was pushing for an additional OTK, that would help out massively helpful as well. The second Shadow Mist was slightly missed, so I am kind of, no pun intended, I am massively considering putting it back in. Whether I side out the Elemental Hero Honest Neos or not, I'm not too sure. It's just one of them personal cards that has done so well for me that I always like to include it. For the Destiny Heroes, 2 Mali, 1 Denier and 1 Plasma. There are times when I feel that this is slightly lacking, and you'll see that I don't play Dark Angel even in the extra deck, side deck, and the reason for that was just purely because of the format we're in. A lot of decks, and when you can see the matchups you'll understand, because obviously when with all the Fire King matchups and Voiceless Voice, most of them have enough space in their extra deck to play a Relinquish Anima, or they are naturally playing a Link Kuriboh anyway, so the lock isn't that important. It is quite good sometimes to give it to your opponent when you're trying to go into game 2 or 3, because you don't need to worry about an evenly matched, and it can be quite devastating in the right matchup. Personally, I didn't feel that I was going to get that at my local environment, which is why I'm not playing it. For the Vision Heroes, of course, again, pretty standard. Triple Faris, double Increase, and double Vion. Now, every time I do this profile, I know the temptation. I feel the exact same temptation that you guys have to cut this down to 1. Don't do it. Every time I cut it down to 1, I always draw it. Every time I side out the second copy, I always draw it, and it means this entire combo is relatively dead. If you're going to cut any down, you'd probably cut down Vion, and even then, that would be one of your choices to be like, okay, I really need to get this card from my side deck in. What could I swap out? And that's one of the options you would have for it. A final Elemental Hero monster, but I left it to the end as it is vanilla, is of course Elemental Hero Neos. Pretty standard on all of that. The lineup relatively speaks for itself. Moving on to the spell cards, Triple Fusion Destiny. There were times where this card actually became dead, because the standard combo you're going to be making to get into your DPE is you're going to be going through monsters to put them to the graveyard, summon them back to the board, activate Poly, and then go into it. However, that being said, if you do hard open Fusion Destiny, it's such a good bait card, because, or even if it's not a bait card, it's such a good card that lets you continue to play. And what you would tend to do, or what I tried to do in this this local environment, was I would do everything I could to not go into my DPE engine to try and bait certain aspects out. And then if my opponent did Nibiru me or did try and stop my board, I then had the Fusion Destiny to go back onto it and had a fallback. Other than that, it's just very easy to discard fodder from that point on as well, but we all know how important Fusion Destiny is. Triple Hero Lives, there was only one time that I ever went into time, which was the Voiceless Voice duel, that ultimately was game 3 and ended up in a draw. It turned into a very, very big grind game, so there was never a point where I felt that this was more of a danger to me for paying half my life points than anything else. But it was incredibly good. I'm so glad that we've got this back at 3. Being able to activate this to get into a Stratos, get into a Shadow Mist without even conducting your normal summon, just allows you to hold back one of your resources to make sure that you can pull out some forms of interruption of your opponent or interaction from them before you then commit a normal summon. Trill Marsh Change 1. There are times when I'm highly considering cutting this down to 2. Again, this deck is actually a 42 card deck, and that's because I made a decision right at the last minute to main deck a side deck card instead of technically side deck because I didn't have much space, and I was like, oh, I really want to try out these cards in my side deck for this environment and see how it goes. So again, the issue with Marsh Change is it's so good if you hard open it because you want to be maxing out on its copies. But then there are times where it's like, okay, well, if I open up multiples, if I open up some that I don't have a hero on the board to turn it into, it does become slightly dead. There was a game where I opened up this in Liquid Soldier, and I was like, I don't have acid, so I can't even use it. So again, arguably could be cut to 2 if you wanted to, but there's no massive issues of having it at 3. The card that I decided to main deck right at the last minute was Forbidden Droplet with Talents. Now, Talents was mainly going to go into the side deck. However, I felt that there was so many decks that were main decking crazy amount of hand traps. And one thing that really surprised me about this deck when I played it is it was very, very resilient. And what I meant by that is normally when I'm playing it, it's like, okay, cool, Ash. And you're like, oh, okay, you Ash me at the perfect time. I can't keep playing. Whereas, I don't know whether it was a surprise factor or whether it was just generally the way the deck can now play, but I ended up facing, in a couple of duels, I ended up facing triple hand traps, and the deck was still able to perform. In both of those triple hand traps, I think one of them was an Imperm, a Morna, an Imperm, a Morna, and a Nib. Another one was an Imperm, a Ash, and a Nib. And the deck was still able to go because I was still able to get access to DPE, I held back more card advantage, it really did work out massively well. Talents was really good in the first Voiceless Voice matchup because I was able to bait out the negates and activate Talents and take it. And I feel saying Voiceless Voice about this deck, it just doesn't give it justice because they were actually playing a 60 card pile, but it was all around the Voiceless Voice with an Alistair the Invoker engine. So their end board was actually pretty impressive because it would be the standard lock of the Voiceless Voice cards backed up by Macabre. So you had to deal with double the forms of interruptions with Saravises in the hand, the trap card and everything else. So it was actually really, really annoying to deal with. But Talents did come in clutch on that matchup specifically. Droplet, I didn't really see it as much. Again, arguably, if you wanted to cut out the Talents, you could put Droplets to 3. But there are times when you see Droplets and it can be a massive game changer. Then the one of Power Spells, Rota, Poly, Miracle Fusion, Call By, put in a lot of work, and then Foolish. These two are cards you never want to see in your hand. You always want to search them. But there will be times when you hard open them. It just is way of the game. Then for the hand traps, what I decided to do again last minute was I decided to main deck Nibiru. And the reason I decided to main deck Nibiru is the only matchup that was no use to me whatsoever, and it was a very easy side out, was in the Voiceless Voice matchup. But when I was looking at the Fire King Tri Brigade matchup, yes, okay, when they're played correctly, the Fire King Tri Brigade matchup and the Fire King matchup can kind of play around Nib, but very few people actually expect Nib in game 1, so they get a little bit lazy, they go for it, and then they go, okay, cool, Nib, and they're like, ah, crap. So my other option, a little bit of a preview, was Phantasme. And the reason I considered putting Phantasme in the main deck over Nibiru was I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to be playing a lot of Fire Kings and sometimes the Voiceless Voice, I can summon down the Phantasme, let me draw into more of my cards that I might need to get my combo started, while also providing me with some targeted protection as well, so that if my opponent is running Imperms, Veilers and everything else, this could actually be very, very helpful. But Nib actually put in a lot of work for me. The other hand traps is Triple Imperm, and then of course the one Favourite Contact. Favourite Contact is just absolutely insane when you get to it and when you resolve it. I actually found myself a lot of the time not really focusing on it because I was either stopped getting to it or I was utilising my cast to produce an OTK, and the OTK was just a lot more consistent and easier to do. So there were a couple times, especially in the Madolche matchup, because the Madolche player is like synonymous for always going second. So sometimes they change it up and they do spice in some go first cards. But then there's times when it's like, okay, so I won the dice roll basically, and I made them go first because I was like, I'll take the risk. Let's see what they've got. They ended up opening up double dart rulers, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm able to play. In game 3, it was a bit more of a risk. So game 2, they played the Secret Village lock, which is really damaging for this deck because I had if I didn't have Nibiru, I couldn't out it. In game 3, they kept the Secret Village lock in, but they got rid of the rest of their go first cards, and I made them go first. It was a very big risk because I was like, if they've read what I'm going to make them do, they will put in all of their go first cards, and their go first cards are basically like a full board plus Fossil Diner and Secret Village, and you're like, yeah, that's nearly impossible to break. But luckily that because we've duelled each other quite a lot actually, so it's always very nice playing that. Like, well, it's not always nice because they just have the absolute insane sack luck. They'll always get a dart roller evenly. But that being said, it's always quite good because there's some nice mind games that go on. Anyway, moving on to the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we'll talk through the Link monsters. So you start off with 2 of your Cross Crusader. This card's just, is what it is. So many times you want to go through 2 to bring back your Destiny heroes, loot them around, get everything you need to, and then search out any of your other hero monsters. Infernal Divisor, being able to search out your Neos, and then being able to basically facilitate the fusions you might want to need to. The only thing you've got to remember is this requires warriors, and this is actually a fiend, not a warrior. So you need to make sure that you can use this to get into this, but not the other way around. Wonder Driver, actually putting a lot of work, because what a lot of people forget is anytime a hero monster is special summoned to its zone. So what was quite helpful is if I'd already used Poly in a previous play that turn, all I needed to do was make Wonder Driver special a hero monster to a zone it pointed to, and then bring that Poly back, and that would then allow me to add a DPE to the end board as well. And then the final Link monster, again, which also put in a lot of work, was the Dread Decimator. I still really rate this. I feel that the Link monsters, in my opinion, for heroes are probably some of the weakest. I feel that there could definitely be an upgrade on Decimator. There could definitely be an upgrade on maybe even Infernal Divisor. I would love to see Cross Crusader getting a foil, so I'm hoping we're going to get that soon as well. But I would really like to see like a Link 4, because all of our plays lock us into heroes. And I know heroes are predominantly fusion based, which is why you see all of these here. But again, there's still just these times when you're like, oh, I really want to upgrade my Decimator, or I need a different Link 3 to go into. So please, Konami, if you're listening, can we get some more Hero Link monsters that could be really, really cool? Then for the fusion monsters, pretty standard on this one. So your Infernal Rage. So Infernal Rage is one of the main ones you're going to go into, because that will then get you into Sunrise, and then ultimately that will end up getting you into your best disruptive one, and that is of course your Shining Neos Wingman. If you don't go down that route, you're probably going to be going down the Wake Up Your Elemental Hero OTK route, which again is absolutely insane and very, very powerful. All the time, you're going to go into a DPE. Now, I'm actually highly considering playing a second DPE, because I decided to go with a DPE and a Dystopia, just in case I ever got into time. This would be a better option for me. Never got into time. The DPE was just constantly able to keep floating, because I wasn't really worried about... Like, the only thing I needed to worry about was stuff like Ghost Spells. Not a lot of people at the local environment are playing DD Crows, thankfully, and there wasn't really a lot of Bestials running around, so I felt a little bit safer just running the one of this, and I wanted the variety. But I can arguably see the reason of playing 2, no real argument against it. The one, Hero Blaster, obviously this is to be able to dodge Imperm and Veilers on your Stratos. It's very rare, very niche that it comes up, but when it does, there's those times where you're like, okay, I'd rather have had it and not needed it than needed it and not have it. And then, of course, the one Absolute Zero. The only thing I would like to put in here is Ashdid, but arguably so. Like, when I looked at my local environment, there wasn't really a huge amount of back row. But that being said, there was Bell running around. The Voiceless Voice was playing a lot of back row as well. So actually having access to an Acid wouldn't be that bad of an idea. So that might come in place of the Hero Blast instead. And the last 2 card is just Mac Daddy, Master Hero Darklaw. Getting this on the board against the Fire King matchup, great success. The Tri Brigade matchup, great success. And the Voiceless Voice one, if I ever got to it, would have been a great success, but I fortunately didn't. Darklaw is what Darklaw is. It's just such an incredibly good card. There's a reason this card has had like nearly every different type of print rarity under the sun, and it's definitely why it's probably the main hero extra deck monster. Now arguably second to DPE, just because of how easier it is to get DPE out. But Master Hero Darklaw is, one of the Mac Daddies, OG Mac Daddy. So before you guys all ask me in the comments below where I get these sleeves, the outer sleeves were purchased a long time ago, and these were from, I think, Mana Moon, or they were from Sleeve Chief, and the extra deck ones that I'm using are the hero ones from Konami. They were just ones that were produced a while ago. Then on to the extra deck. So for the extra deck, I was playing 3 Phantasme. Pretty much already spoke about that one. I went with the balance of Bell and Crows, but arguably you could just play 3 Bells if you want to. 2 Cosmic Cyclone, just for those times where if my opponent was setting up stuff that was floodgates like anti-spell or anything else, I had an answer to it, which is also why you played Dusters and Lightning Storms, and then Evenese, which was just Mac Daddy, board breaker, do everything you need to. I do feel that I probably... I mean, this will always change depending on your local environment and where you're taking it to. I would definitely kind of consider, maybe I feel more go first cards. I felt like I probably could have done with a couple more alternative floodgates maybe, because when I was going first, there wasn't really a lot I was putting in. I was just putting in the hand traps for that environment. So I'd be like, okay, cool, I'll put in Ghost Spell, and maybe I'll put in Crow, maybe I'll put in Cosmics if they had back row to deal with. But the rest of this, like, this is all Ghost second cards. I wouldn't even worry about it. And the Phantasmate obviously clashes with Evenly. So it's one of the ones where it's like, if you're going to put in, I wouldn't have Phantasmate, Nibiru and Evenly. I'd only have a mixture of the two of them, whatever was more successful in the matchup. So, for example, Voiceless Voice, evenly in, Nibiru out, because they weren't playing into it, and they weren't really linked someone in a lot, so this wasn't that effective. In the Fire King Tri Brigade matchup, this went in and Evenly went in because they were making Appaloosa and Nibiru, so I was able to make this before they Appaloosa, and then if I opened up Evenly, I'd put it back into the deck and then obviously have fresh cards to go with. But like I said, the extra deck will pretty much adapt depending on your environment and your playstyle and basically everywhere else you want to take it. So that is it for the hero profile. I hope this has given you a bit of an idea on your own one and a breakdown with an understanding of why particular cards are being chosen to be used in this build. I still think it's far from perfect. My biggest issue with heroes right now is they have so many good cards that you want to be playing with stuff like Stratos, Vion, Increase, Shadow Mist, all your Destiny heroes, that I find it very difficult to see what they could possibly add to the main deck that would allow you to replace these cards. And the flex spots you have is probably like 6 cards, 6 to 8 cards when you're looking at like talents, or 2 talents, 3 Nibirus, like 10 cards I suppose. And even that I've put it over to a 42. So to get it to a 40 card deck, it's only 8 cards you have flex spots with, which can become your board breakers, your hand traps and everything else. So I feel that there's a little bit more ease and success with trying to make this deck as a Ghost second OTK build, but I then also feel that you're running into a lot of problems that way, because I feel end boards of modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! Are just crazy strong right now. So it'll be very cool to see if we do get any future support for this deck. I can't wait to see what cards we get as a rarity upgrade in Rarity Collection 2, or maybe just some future products that Konami look to be adding more rarity or quarter centuries in. It'd be nice to get like the full vision lock. Definitely need an upgrade on Shadow Mist as well. That's been a super from like day one. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.